Two countries. Neither one ever directly invaded the other. 50 years of everything else. No war. Technically. Also. Korea, Vietnam, Cuba, Afghanistan, Angola, Nicaragua. Dozens of coups. Several near extinctions of the human species. The Cold War wasn't cold. It was the hottest conflict in history. It just happened mostly in other people's countries. This is how it actually worked. In 1945, World War II ended. Two countries emerged as superpowers. The United States, economy booming, cities untouched, military enormous. The Soviet Union, 27 million dead, Western cities in rubble, but military also enormous and now occupying half of Europe. Every other major power, Britain, France, Germany, Japan, was exhausted, bankrupt, or both. The world had two centers of gravity, and they hated each other's entire philosophy. The United States believed in capitalism, private property, free markets, democracy, individual rights. The Soviet Union believed in communism, state ownership, planned economy, one-party rule, collective good. Each side thought the other's system was not just wrong, but actively dangerous. Each side thought the other was trying to take over the world. Both were partly right. Then both sides got nuclear weapons. The United States first, in 1945, the Soviet Union in 1949. A direct war now meant nuclear war. Nuclear war meant the end of both countries, possibly the end of civilization. So they couldn't fight each other directly. Instead they developed mutual assured destruction. The logic: if attacking you guarantees my own destruction, neither of us attacks. The problem: this only works if everyone stays rational. The second problem: it requires constantly building more weapons to maintain the threat. So they did, for 50 years. Meanwhile, Europe was split. The Soviet Union had liberated Eastern Europe from the Nazis. Then it just stayed. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany, all became Soviet satellite states. Governments installed by Moscow. Borders you couldn't cross. Churchill called it the Iron Curtain. Germany itself was split into two countries. Berlin was walled off so East Germans couldn't escape to the west. East Germany built a wall to keep its own citizens in. That tells you something. The first hot war came in Korea. 1950. North Korea, communist, backed by the Soviets and China, invaded South Korea. The United States led a coalition to push them back. 3 million people died. The war ended in 1953 along almost exactly the same border it started at. Nothing changed geographically. 3 million people died for a line on a map. Both Koreas still exist. They are technically still at war. In 1962, the world came closest to nuclear war. Cuba, 90 miles off Florida, had a communist revolution in 1959. The Soviets installed nuclear missiles there. The United States noticed. For 13 days, Kennedy and Khrushchev stared at each other. The rest of the world held its breath. Eventually, the Soviets removed the missiles. The US quietly removed its missiles from Turkey. Everyone agreed to never mention the Turkey part. The world survived, barely. Vietnam was supposed to be quick. The logic: if South Vietnam fell to communism, every neighbor would follow. The domino theory. The US sent advisors, then troops, then 500,000 soldiers, fighting a jungle war against an enemy that had been defeating foreign occupiers for decades. 58,000 Americans died. Roughly 2 million Vietnamese died. The US withdrew in 1973. South Vietnam fell 2 years later. The dominoes did not fall. The United States lost its first war. The same pattern played out across the entire globe. Any country with a civil war, a coup, or a revolution became a Cold War chess piece. Angola, Ethiopia, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Iran, Chile, Afghanistan. The US-backed anti-communist governments, regardless of whether they were democratic. The Soviets-backed anti-American movements, regardless of whether they were communist. Both superpowers funded and armed fighters to battle their ideological wars in other people's countries. The people in those countries lived and died with the consequences. At home, both sides raced. The arms race. Each side built far more nuclear weapons than any defense required. At peak, enough warheads to destroy the world several times over. The space race. Whoever reached space first proved their system was superior. Soviets launched the first satellite, put the first human in orbit. Americans landed on the moon. Both spent extraordinary sums trying to out-science and out-weapon the other. The Soviet economy quietly could not keep up. By the 1980s, the Soviet system was failing. A planned economy running on ideology had not produced what people actually needed. The military was consuming resources the country didn't have. Afghanistan had become their Vietnam. In 1985, Gorbachev tried to reform the system. The reforms released pressure that had been building for 40 years. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern European countries broke free one by one. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. 15 countries where there had been one. The Cold War was over. So, how did the Cold War actually work? Two superpowers, too afraid of each other to fight directly. So they fought everywhere else. They divided Europe. They armed every conflict on Earth. They spent 50 years preparing to end civilization. And somehow didn't. When it ended, the weapons were still there. The borders they drew were still there. The governments they'd propped up were still there. Or had just collapsed, leaving a vacuum. The Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia. Much of what looks like local conflict today has Cold War fingerprints on it. It didn't end. It just changed shape. The blunt historian. History explained. No fluff. Next episode. How did the British Empire actually work? And why does it keep coming up in conversations about everything?